Hello and welcome to Uncovered, the podcast with your host, Jason Irving. Join me in a journey to understand what's truly happening in your world and the world around you. This is not about how you're living life on the surface. It's about what's truly driving you from under the covers. I'm going to take you on a journey to deeply uncover the reason why you are here, the ultimate purpose in your problems and the way that they have shaped your life up until now. See, I believe you have a purpose, and your problems are the highway towards ultimate realization of that journey towards freedom and the reconnection of your true self. I've been told I have a different spin on most things, and I'll be giving you my understanding of life, love, and what we're all here for, purpose. To get the best out of this podcast, drop what you already know so you can discover what's beyond you. So join me, let's play this game of life and bring on liberation, transformation, and change. Let's do this. Hey guys, welcome to Uncovered. I'm super excited. I've got this amazing woman, Tracey, who is a parenting expert, a birthing expert. She's an expert on anything when it comes to family. I absolutely love this woman. So Tracey, welcome to Uncovered.
Thank you, Jason. I'm not an expert, darling, but I've travelled the road. I've travelled
Well,
a fair bit of the
I
road.
bear to disagree here. I've experienced you, and
Thank you.
I have experienced not just your knowledge, your expertise. I'm definitely claiming you as an expert. So I don't care
Oh,
what you say. I'm saying
thank
this,
you.
and this is my podcast. I'm just mucking around. Right. So, Tracey, I'd love you to give the listeners a
Mm,
little bit of an idea of sort of where your background is, where you come from, and
sure.
what's been happening in your world. I haven't talked to you for ages. So
No.
excited to.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's a lovely opportunity to catch up. So, background, country girl, grew up in the country, get on with it, sort of an approach to life, became a teacher, love children, deeply fascinated by children and what makes them tick. And always saw my role as a teacher as trying to unlock their potential. What's in there and what can we get out of them and how to help children reach their full potential. And then I got to a point where I needed to have my own children. And it was in that journey that changed my life in ways I could never have imagined. I was pregnant with my first son. He's nearly 30. He's 29 this year. So, yeah, that's a long time ago now. And it was a textbook pregnancy until the very end of that pregnancy when he was breech. And so things started to move off the normal path. And I had a doctor who, up until this point, I absolutely loved because I was just in and out in 5 minutes, and that was great. But the way he dealt with me when it came to Sam, he was trying to project fear onto me to get me to have a cesarean. And fear's not my language. In fact, when people project fear, I get a little bit suspicious. So I came out of that consultation feeling like, oh man, that guy needs a therapist. What the hell are you telling me about dead babies for? I've got a live baby. I just wanted to know what I needed to do to get the job done.
Mm,
And so that led me on a path to getting some advice to get a second opinion. And I found a different doctor who gave me a totally different view of the same situation, had a look at the position of Sam and said, he's in a good position to be born vaginally. And he gave me some advice about what I needed to do to get the job done. And then I found an independent midwife, and she was the one really who I realised, oh, you're the one who's going to be able to help me to birth this baby. Um, and get on with parenting. There was just something about her, Jason, that intuitively felt like she was the right fit for me because the questions she was asking and the way she was involving my partner helped me to see that she understood this as more than just a physical process of giving birth. There was something richer and deeper about the way she was approaching this. So, to cut a long story short, we went ahead and gave birth to Sam, and he came out bum first, which is very typical of my son Sam. I don't think he's changed that much. But that process unlocked in me a new me that I never really had, I guess. It just shifted my whole orientation as a woman completely, going from the woman to the mother. I was just on fire. I was so in love with this baby. My husband was full of oxytocin. All I wanted to do was just be all over him, all over the baby. Um, and it was just a new me. And I feel incredibly grateful to that midwife who was able to hold space for me to give birth in a way that unlocked what I believe Mother Nature wants us to experience when we have a child. And that's when I started to realize how important this time was. Now, I ended up having four children, and all boys,
Wow.
and I birthed them all with the support of an independent midwife. And as a result of that, a new passion really had been ignited inside of me. And I really started to listen to women's stories about birth. I started to identify how we can go off track with birth, how we don't always support women well. I became a doula, which is a professional childbirth support person, and sat with women in births. I sat women in circles, new mothers in circles, and we explored this whole area of mothering. And I used to listen to their stories, and I just became deeply, deeply curious about this particular, what I would now call rite of passage, and what it is for and it's not just the woman. It's the other parent or the father is also walking through this doorway into parenthood, and birth is a little bit like a catalyst. It's intense, it's mysterious, you can't control it. At best you can influence it, but sometimes even then you can't influence it. But it's the walking through that gate that really unlocks something that Mother Nature is very invested in us really falling in love with that baby and transforming into the mother and the father archetypes, these bigger versions of the man and the woman. I call it a bigger version because it's no longer about me. It's about we, it's about the baby, it's about family, it's about each other. And it's inviting people in this time to really step up and mature, to grow, not just their babies, but to grow themselves up. So I have been incredibly fascinated. And I'm still doing the same stuff 25 years later. And I am never bored with this work because I get to watch these transformations.
I
Yeah, so that's
love
kind
that.
of the catalyst and how it started.
It's so nice to have like a real purpose and, getting told by someone that something's going to go wrong.
Yeah.
And then you trusting this really important thing that I think a lot of women have let go of is women's
Mm,
intuition, that something was just not right in what you were
yeah.
being told. And you trusted that. And that's
Mm,
something that I really admire about you, Tracy, is that you'll trust your gut feel, your heart feel, and that is what you're probably helping other people to do
mm,
in what you do, I'm assuming now, is helping people remind themselves that they have, as you said, this amazing biological
yeah.
system that is so brilliantly built on Mother Earth to do something natural that we have turned into something not natural and mechanical, haven't we?
Mm. Oh, 100%. And we focus on the wrong shit. You know, we
Yeah.
we focus on the stuff. We focus on, even it's interesting, Jason, working with so many women now, like thousands of women now, watching them go through this. I don't even label birth anymore. I don't, we used to use the term natural birth. And whilst I absolutely believe in physiological birth and what it can do for us in terms of our preparation to be mothers, the idea of birth being a natural process as opposed to anything that needs help is unnatural or less than. I moved
Yes.
away from using that term because I see every birth as a journey into the land of welcoming a child into the world. And by the way, grow up yourself, because if you don't, your children are going to press your buttons and they're going to stir you up and they're going to bring out other parts in you that you didn't even know were there.
Yeah, so let's
So,
talk about that a little bit because
mm,
I know from my experience, like, and I know from knowing you very well, the experience of a child, like that first 7 years,
mm,
is subconsciously riddled with what they're going to take in from their environment. Yeah.
yeah, 100%. So when children are born, when babies are born, they are not, we are not giving birth to a piece of meat, okay? They are a fully formed little being, and they are in utero from a very, very young age and stage. The intelligence of the system of what gets created in utero is quite phenomenal, and they grow incredibly fast in that phase. And then the next most rapid period of growth is from 0 to 1. And so when babies are born, their whole orientation is around survival. They need to create connection and bonding with their primary caregivers, and they innately know that these are the people that are the key to their survival. And when their needs are responded to, and when they feel safe and secure and loved and responded to, then that sets the scene for them being more open and curious and taking risks and learning. However, if that bond is a bit tenuous, if it's a bit hit and miss, if it's, there one day and not the next, babies start to learn to adapt their behavior in order to establish that bond. And we call it maladaptive. I don't think it's actually maladaptive as much as pretty smart to try and get the attention of the parents.
Yeah.
It's part of what they're wired to do. And their brains are, their brainwave state is in a state of alpha. And what that means is that they're really receptive to learning. So their brainwave states are slow, and that causes them to absorb their world, and then they mimic. And it's in that mimicking that they learn how to be with their caregivers. And so when we become parents, not only is our babies, not a blank slate, they're wired, they've got this intelligence response to us, but we also have to them. And from a subconscious point of view, and this may or may not be good news for people, but our subconscious learns to parent by the way we were parented. So that's on the deeper level. So if there's any issues that we've had as young children where our needs weren't met or our voice wasn't heard or things like that, then it's more likely to come up in our parenting journey. And so when I look at that, I think, wow, what a system, what an incredible system of adaptation and the, I guess, inbuilt mechanisms to help grow us into a state of maturity where we move beyond the self into the higher self, into other aspects of us that has to be more selfless and more responsive and open our hearts more. And of course, there's a lot of biological mechanisms that are innate within us that are gearing us towards that, but also through the complexity of the human brain and our subconscious and how we get programmed, that too is playing out. And so, Jason, when I started to look at this, apart from scaring the crap out of me and how I parent my own children, it's like, far out, this is big shit. But I've also learned along the way that we don't have to be perfect parents. In fact, perfect parents are not helpful to our children at all. Our children need to see us in all of our rawness, but they also need to see us overcome challenges as well. So this period of time from pregnancy to giving birth to those first 7 years are really foundational for everybody in that family. And that's what really got me wanting to do more and more to keep supporting first the mothers through the mothers groups and the fathers as well, and to create a membership and a sense of community so they've got these connections with people who are like-minded, to also now doing work with therapy, hypnotherapy, and small group coaching sessions to really start to work on the inner landscape that we have as parents, where we are being required to grow and to overcome some of those old patterns and things that have been installed through nobody's fault, but just the way life is, and to upgrade the system. And we're doing amazing work. It's quite unique, actually, the work that we're doing now to help parents overcome some of those limiting sort of factors that can influence not just their parenting, but their life.
Yeah,
It's
look,
pretty cool.
I don't think it's pretty cool. I think it's essential. I think this role that you play, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, listeners, is that this is probably the most essential role that you are playing to help community and people become better people. Because
Mm.
if people keep riding on their, I'll just be blunt, their stupid shit that they do,
Yeah.
the kids have to override and figure out how to deal with the stupid shit that they've collected, and they've got to
Mm.
figure out how to break that stupid shit. But if you come in into
Yeah.
that place and say, here is the stupid shit that we do,
Yeah.
how can we make sure we turn it into elegant ease and turn the
Mm.
shit into fertilizer so it can grow great trees and create an amazing forest and an ecosystem of amazing human beings
Mm.
that can actually change this planet? So I think what you're doing, Tracy, is like an essential service, in my
Mm.
opinion.
Mm.
And that's why I really was excited to get you on this podcast. I was thinking last week, I've got to get her on.
Thank
Because
you.
Anja had this experience with you that was phenomenal. She was so nervous of giving birth,
Mm.
and the landscape completely changed through the way in which you show up, Tracy. And for listeners, when you hear her voice, there's a calmness that comes through her voice that gives assurance for a person who is getting her help. And as we spoke about before we jumped on the podcast, Anya was the least person that I was expected to be able to do an easy experience through birth, and she
Mm.
had an orgasmic birth, and that's just not what I was
She,
expecting.
she had a massive change.
Yeah.
I'll just comment on that. I've seen this time and time again. I always remember your story because it was such a big change. But it's the women who are the most scared that often make the biggest change. Because when you're fearful of birth, that's your subconscious saying, do something. We're about to walk into the abyss, not comfortable here. I'm not in control. I don't know what's ahead.
Mm.
And so when you give people good quality information about their bodies, about the way their mind works and how it's all put together, we're not a walking uterus, we are far more than that. And when you put that together, and it's not, by the way, life according to Tracey, it's not opinion, it's just here's how the system works, here's how we can optimize it. And by the way, let's work with the subconscious, because the subconscious mind in birth is the part that dictates the physiological response to your birth. So if you're always wondering, why does birth seem so complicated and why do people seem to have so much fuss when it comes to giving birth? It's because we've got our heads full of shit, and it's not good compost shit, Jace. It's
No, it's not.
it's a lot of noise. It's a
Yeah.
lot of noise that gets in the way and creates a lot of fear and culture, and the way our parents spoke about birth, and all these different things can influence the way we respond to birth. And so we need to sort that component out. And I'm very, very, very deliberate in everything that I do, because I know what those fears are that most people have, and I've got very clear mechanisms to unlock them and to give the mind a path forward through something as mysterious as birth. So we address all those fears, and people just see it differently. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, this is doable now. And they present with a physiology that is working with the process rather than against it, which means we can optimize those beautiful feel good hormones. And if you're wondering how the hell Anya had an orgasm in childbirth, it's because she was full of oxytocin.
Mm.
Oxytocin is the hormone that makes those contractions happen. It's the hormone of labor, but it's also the hormone of orgasm.
Mm.
So, what do you think Mother Nature wants us to have? One baby and go, never again am I doing that. No, the blueprint, the cocktail of hormones inherent in the birth process are performance enhancing feel good hormones. So,
Mm.
Mother Nature, she wants us to have to work for our babies. She wants it to be intense so that we can wake up to our own magnificence. But she also wants us to keep wanting to have babies. So, she didn't design it to be traumatic. She didn't design it to be the worst thing I've ever experienced. She wants us to keep wanting to have babies, but we're not able to optimize that hormone release without doing the work to re-educate our minds, both with knowledge and understanding, but also the deeper part of the mind, which then elicits the capacity to overcome fears, which then changes physiology.
100%.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we are challenged by, Tracy, is the model, right? The
Mm.
model's so good. We don't want to bag it because at the end of the
Yeah.
day, people have stayed alive because of it. Yes?
100%. Yeah.
No? But there was one
Yeah.
period that could have ruined Anya's birth where we went in really early, so they put the clock on.
Yeah.
And then because it was so long, the labor, but we could have waited about 4 or 5 hours before we went in. We just went in straight away.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they wanted to actually give drugs. And I went out with the nurse said, we need to intervene here. And I
Mm.
was lucky enough to have you in my head going, you actually told me don't let this happen. And you weren't talking to me.
No.
You were in my head and you said, don't let this happen. So I had to go out and talk to this doctor who was saying to me, you could kill your wife
Oh, nice.
and your child
Yeah.
for letting her continue on.
Mm.
And and then everything was on me. She put all of that pressure on me.
Mm.
And as a man coming into this space, I'm like, am I doing the right thing? And I just trusted.
Wow.
And she had the most magnificent birth.
Mm.
But if I had have gone and listened to the model, none of what that experience would have been had. And Anya would have
Mm.
been, yes, this is the experience. And sometimes that has to happen,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The listeners who have
This
had
is,
that happen, uh,
yep.
and you maybe haven't gotten this amazing understanding around ritual and
Mm.
connection to the feminine from Tracy, you don't know that there's another way. And
Mm.
even some people have tried Tracy's work, and it doesn't go as planned. It goes as what is meant to be, as
Yeah.
you said. And I love the positive way of the way that you look at these things because have you worked with people and you've done the work with them and then they feel like a failure after it hasn't gone well and you have to go and convince them otherwise that hey, you've got this beautiful baby and it went the
Mm.
way it was meant to go? How do you handle that?
Not on my watch.
Okay, what
No.
happens?
And I'll tell you why. And I know exactly what you're saying, because people can, have these ideas of an ideal birth and they come and do my program and they do the practices and they do all the right things, and then things need help. And I've been in enough births myself to realize that sometimes we do need help. And to just assume that the body and the natural way is going to be the right way for everybody is very unrealistic when it comes to childbirth. There are a lot of forces at play. And I used to see that early on in my career, Jason. It'd break my heart where women would say, oh, I failed. I did it wrong. I didn't get it right. And one of the things I did early on is I used to debrief birth stories with women. And boy, did I learn a lot through that. And as a way of, as part of that learning, I started to see the perfection of even difficult and complex births. Because when you watch the story long enough, you start to see that no birth is ever in vain.
Mm.
And sometimes it's the most complex, births where the medical caregivers have potentially made the wrong calls at certain things, or it's gotten really complicated and hard for the mother. Sometimes they're the ones that teach us the most, even if it's the ability to use your voice or advocate for yourself. Every person has to walk their path. And that's why I don't judge birth as being good or bad, natural or cesarean. Like what, it's like judging a baby, Have you got a good baby? No, I've got an evil one. It's the same, it's the same thing. It's like there's no such thing as a good baby or a bad baby. There's just some babies are more harder to manage than others, and some births are more harder to manage than others.
Mm.
So I don't complicate it by putting value judgments on what a birth should look like. So what that means is when I prepare people, I prepare them for birth under all circumstances.
I love that.
And I help them to see that cesarean birth can be really beautiful, particularly when you exercise your capacity to choose certain things. And there's a few beautiful things you can do in cesareans that transform the experience quite dramatically. But every woman ultimately has to walk her path. But I'd like to come back to your sharing about around Anya's story. That was a huge thing for you to carry the confidence in Anja in the face of medical professionals threatening, and it happens, you know, the dead baby card, or I mean, we even use that term, which tells you a lot, doesn't it?
Mm.
It's a very motivating force when you've got health professionals telling you your baby might die, your wife might die, or your partner might die. That's very motivating to do what you're told. However, what we have to realize in the medical system, and this will be a big epiphany to a lot of people out there, is it's being run by humans, and humans are imperfect. And even though they know a lot of things that we don't know, they're not always attuned to the mysterious forces that are involved in the birth process, and they're not taught to trust women.
Yeah.
And part of the problem that they have is they don't have the luxury of trusting women either, because what do we do when things go wrong? We sue their asses off, and
Yeah.
they end up in a court of law. So we've created this
Yeah.
as much as anybody, and we need to own the system. It doesn't work for them. It doesn't work for the women. It doesn't even work for the doctors, because the pressure for them to get it right is really very high. And we don't like it when mistakes are made, particularly if babies don't make it, you know, or even mothers, which is very, very rare. But so I always describe the medical system as this incredible safety net, and we're really lucky to have it because
Yeah.
it does do a good job of, you know, keeping babies and us alive. However, it's come at the cost of women's confidence, and we've got to bring back confidence to women in their ability to contribute to the birth process, not just feel like passive recipients, but also people like you, Jason, to empower you to trust in your partner enough to be able to push back and to be an advocate in that period of time. And that's really difficult to do, particularly when you've got authorities playing those sorts of cards. So can I ask you a question on your own podcast now? Is that all
Yeah,
right?
sure, go for it.
what what was it about that situation that enabled you to have confidence in the face of that? What can you remember when you tune in? And you're a pretty attuned bloke, so
I trusted my wife.
yeah, right.
I knew she had the strength.
Mm,
And everything was going along perfectly. We were doing the process that you had taught us to make sure
yeah,
I was holding her. So you gave me all the tools that I needed to do
yeah.
to make sure Anya was not flexing her arms or her
Mm,
legs, and making sure everything was really nice and calm. So everything was going into the right, appropriate place. So there was no
yeah.
strain. I knew she had the strength and in her body. I just knew it, and I just had to back the strength of my wife. And the
Mm,
thing was, is that I knew that we would put it on a clock well before we needed to go too. So I know what
yeah,
they
yeah,
do. They put the clock on the moment we arrive.
yeah.
We're clocked on, and then
Mm,
I know they have a certain time that they say, okay, at this time, this is what we need to do. So
mm,
I understood why they said this. And
yeah.
so I had to just trust my instincts and trust my wife's body. And I
Mm,
know she's strong. I
mm,
know she's one of the most powerful women I know. So
yeah,
I just
correct.
wanted to trust that my wife and the timing. And the
Mm.
worst thing about it afterwards, Tracy, when this beautiful Liam came out, um, the doctor gave me a stink eye.
That's a bit sad.
Yeah, I got a stink eye.
He didn't see it for what it was. Now that's such an interesting thing, and I'll tell
I
you
got
why.
I got like this, and I was just like, "You're kidding me!" Here I am. I'm a dad, and I get fuck you. You didn't take notice of me. That's what I got. I could not
Wow.
believe it. I'm in complete, as you would be, dad, oxytocin, and being completely insulted by a doctor. The worst look I've ever seen.
But do
How
you know
dare
why that
you not follow my rules?
exactly? And what's so very interesting about this story is that he just witnessed an orgasmic birth,
Yeah.
but he didn't have the frames to recognize it. And that's part of the problem. Many, many health professionals have not seen undisturbed birth, and they don't even know that that's a possibility.
No.
And so when it's presented there and you can see the power, instead of celebrating in it, he actually he got his back up and his ego was in the room. And I
Yeah.
don't believe there's any place for ego in a birthing room. I think it can
No.
change births in a whiffy. And part of the problem when you've got people who haven't had experiences like that or don't know more about the mysteries of birth and what's possible in that space is they have a great habit of creating the very problems that they solve.
Yeah,
And then
100%.
they look like the heroes. And then they pat themselves on the back saying, didn't I do a good job? And then they feel for somebody who comes into the next birthing room who says, actually, we want to choose. We're fine. There's no sign that the baby's distressed. We're happy to give it more time. That they've kind of got caught in their own, I guess, experience of not being able to see the impact of what they're doing on the actual birthing woman and to limit the experiences to complex birth that needs help, that needs management, that needs control. And I
Mm.
think that's part of the problem for a lot. But there are amazing doctors and midwives out there who do know of these mysteries and who do realize the power of physiological birth. It's so important for anybody listening to this. Your caregivers play a major role in the actual outcome of what happens when you deliver a baby.
Mm.
And it's so important you surround yourself by people who you feel safe with, who you feel will respect your voice. And the best models of care for that is primarily continuity midwifery models because they're taught to trust the process more so.
Right.
But it'll always depend on the person on the day and whether it's a fit. It's like choosing a partner, actually. You want to make sure there's a rapport there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I've got another question for you,
Mm,
Tracy, because I know that you do a process which helps not only a birthing process, you take people through a journey to their first 7 years.
mm,
So
yeah.
when you're looking at, helping people, become better people, better parents, and all of those sorts of things, with the birth, does the child become type personality connected to the birth if the birth is maybe strenuous? Is there a link between the child and the actual birthing experience as well? I'm just interested to
It's a
hear
good
what you've got to
question.
say about that.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing you can have twins go through the identical birth experience and be impacted very differently.
Mm.
So, yes, what we do know about the birth process is it gets imprinted into the mind. It's one of the biggest things a human will ever go through is the process of giving birth. It's one of the biggest things a woman will go through is the process of actually delivering a baby. And because it is so intense, the subconscious is very receptive to experiences that are intense, that particularly when they're on the edge of life and death, which in some ways, not so much in our day and age, but historically would put women on the edge of life and death. And so those experiences get imprinted into the mind. But the translation of those imprints into perception is a deeply mysterious, unique, individual thing.
Mm.
Mm. And so, yes, it can influence the development of a child, but there's a lot of things that influence the development of the child, not just the birth process. It will be one of those memories that can get lodged. But there's a whole lifetime of experiences that form part of that subconscious programming, and then who that person or human evolves into being.
Mm. So
Yeah.
when you're taking people through your program,
Mm,
helping mums become more empowered as a mum and all of those things, I'd love to ask you this question because I've seen this a lot. Mum guilt.
mm,
Can you talk to me? Can you talk us about, what happens to the child with mum guilt? Like what do you do to help mums not be
mm.
guilty
and put all the effort into their child and not and forget themselves. What happens with the with that experience?
Yeah, well, we talk a bit about mum guilt. I have reminds me of a quote of a friend of mine. She's Irish, and she said to me one day, "Oh, when that sperm hits that egg, a decent dose of guilt goes in with it." It's like it comes with the territory.
Yeah,
I always see guilt as having a very high care factor.
yeah,
Yeah. So when you experience a lot of parent guilt, and it's not just mums, but it tends to be more woman oriented, but men can feel it too. The idea of guilt is that idea of wanting to do it right, wanting to get it
yeah.
right. And it
Okay.
can be a bit linked to perfectionism too. It's like we give
Mm,
ourselves a hard time when we don't show up being the parents that we want to. But here's the thing about guilt. Guilt is a very real feeling that should happen when we hurt people. It's a feeling of remorse, of I wish I hadn't have done that.
mhm.
Okay. And sometimes we label other things as guilt that aren't actually guilt. For example, I've got to go to work because I need to provide for my family, but when I leave my baby, I feel guilty. That's not actually guilt because you're not hurting your child by
Mm,
going to work. You're actually, that's
gotcha.
part of what you need to do to support that child. It's more of a tension. It's like there's a part of you that wants to be at home with that child, and there's a part of you that needs to be at work. And there's like two parts of you are pulling on the rope. And whilst you're pulling on the rope, you're labeling it as guilt, when in actual fact, it's not guilt, it's a tension. Drop the rope, people, drop the rope,
Mm,
because you don't need to give yourself a hard time about something that has to happen.
yeah,
And it can often be created as not trusting the child to be able to cope. You know, you need to be able to see your children as being able to adapt and cope in new situations with new people. And your job is to support them to make those transitions into childcare or wherever they need to go. So, parent guilt is an interesting one, but when you start to drill it down a little bit more, it's often not guilt, it's just the tensions of life. And we end up doing things sometimes that we don't want to do. Um, and when you do behave towards your child, like another term that we don't talk about enough, but I love to talk about, is parent rage.
mm,
I don't think I knew what rage was until I had my boys. And I can recall my first really potent experience of it was when my oldest son was about 3 and my younger one was, my first two was 1. And my 1-year-old was on a trike and he was at the top of these sort of 3 slate stairs into another room in the house. And my oldest son came and pushed him down the stairs on the little trike. And I went from being as calm as I am now into a parent rage in
yeah,
half a nanosecond,
yeah.
left the child who was hurt to chase the child who did it,
Mm,
and went screaming after him and gave him a whack on the bum. And as a teacher, I always said I would never smack my children. I was mortified. So
mm,
when we come face to face with those darker, the shadow side of parenting,
mm,
where we can get angry like that, where our children can press our buttons, when we can discover parts of ourselves that we've never seen before,
yeah,
where you just look at your kids and you want to bloody throw them at the wall or put them back where they came from. The best way to um, grow as a result of that experience is to bring light to it, to be open about it, to share
yeah,
it. And that's what we do in our communities.
yeah,
That's why I resisted you to calling me an expert. It's like, no, I'm not an expert of parenting. However, I believe in keeping it real and talking about the challenges and finding ways for us to grow as a result of them, to be bigger and better so that we can show up to be the parents that we want to be. But part of it is just to be really honest about the hard shit that goes on. So I'm always
mhm,
telling people about my horror parenting stories, and I've
yeah.
got plenty of them.
But that's the reason why I challenge that again, because an expert
Yeah,
is exactly what you're saying. I think people don't
yeah,
understand expertise. An
true.
expert is someone who's
Expertise,
willing
yeah,
to
yeah,
say that they
yeah,
got it wrong and
Yeah.
this is what they did, and this is what they did next, and this is how they did it
Yeah.
wrong again, and this is what they learn about this. That's what expertise is all about. I think people miss the point of
Yeah. Yeah.
expert,
You're right about that.
because
Yeah.
I believe what you just said there is expertise. You just
Mm.
explained the truth, which I think a lot of people don't accept as a parent. I've got some very shameful parenting things that I've done,
Mm.
right? And I don't feel, people have called me the best dad ever that they've ever seen.
Mm.
I'm not, I look at some of the things I've done as a parent, I go, that wasn't good.
Mm.
And I fully accept that in the way
Yeah.
that I've been. And that's the most important thing, because, Tracey, to not acknowledge those things
Mm.
is what de-expertises people, because you're letting people know you're real, you're human, and
Yeah.
you're going to have these things where you're going to want to flush your kid down the toilet, and
Mm.
you're going to want to run out as far as you can away from the house as humanly possible. And that is mothering and fathering,
Mm.
right? And to be real
Yep.
about it is where what I'm so happy about uncovering today, because
Mm.
this is real talk. Because
Yeah.
most people talk, let's talk about the fantasy world
Mm.
of life, and that's not real.
No.
Because what you're giving listeners right now is permission to know that they made a mistake, and
Mm.
to not feel broken by that mistake and learn from it, not say you've got to get it perfect and you've got to get it right. And that's what
Mm.
an expert advisor and caregiver is designed to do, is to present their own personal flaws
Mm.
to the group, to make sure there's no separation between you and your
Yeah.
clients. Because
100%.
otherwise, you're going to look like Wonder Woman. Everyone's going to try and live up to
Oh,
you, and then they're not going to tell you
no.
what they did today. Oh, I had a great day, Tracey. I yelled at my kid, I hit them, but I don't want to tell
Mm.
you that,
Mm.
because
Mm.
you'll shame me, and I
Yeah.
won't. And that's the biggest cause of problems in this world, is dishonesty. Would you
Mm.
agree?
Oh, 100%. I often say to my families, perfection is boring, people. You don't want to be boring. That's
Mm.
yeah. And if you can, and this is what we do further down the track with parents when they're ready for it, not in that first year, because you're in survival in that first year, but after that, particularly with toddlers, because they're so tricky and they can be so embarrassing, and they can, bring out your in public, put you in really horrible situations, which I just think is hilarious. I love toddlers for that, how they bring people unstuck. I think it's great. Um, Further down the track, as we start to really be challenged by our children's behaviour, the next journey is to bring compassion to ourselves and the parts of us that are reactive,
Mm.
and to really start to work with understanding that you're not a bad parent. There's no such thing as a bad parent. There's a part of you that reacts. Let's talk to that part. Let's get to know that part. What is that part trying to do in this situation to protect you or that child? There's always an intelligence to our system. And when we start to, I guess, look into that inner landscape and that where those reactions come from, these are really back to those unconscious programs that are doing their best to try and mature and to upgrade and to help us to be better and do better in our reactivity, so
Yeah.
that we don't just react. And I want to bring in another part of this too, Jason, which I know people don't discuss and I think is so important, is when if you can picture that your reality is governed by your unconscious, your subconscious. But there's three things that feed into your subconscious. One is the unconscious programs, the imprints, the ways we've learnt to be in the world in order to survive and protect, often from when we were very young. And that's the part that can feed our reactivity when we show up in ways that we don't want to show up in. And that's doing the inner work of parenting. That's the part that you really want to start to work with, because if you don't, your kids are going to keep pressing those buttons. And by the time they're teenagers, you're going to be a psycho, you're going to be a cop case, you're not going to know how to deal with them. And you've lost your connection because you haven't done the work of upgrading your internal landscape. And then there's the part of us that is when we're in balance, when we're present, when we meet them eye to eye and we're able to respond. And then there's a higher self, a higher part that is, I call it in the classes intuitive. We've named it many different things over history: God, nature, genius, higher self, however you want to phrase it. But that's the aspirational nature that we want to sort of go towards, because that's the part of us that can look at our child in any one moment, and because our own shit isn't playing out, we're not being triggered, we can sense and feel into what this child needs right now, and we can respond in a way that doesn't come from thoughts. For example, oh, you're driving me nuts. Why haven't you done your homework? And you, what have I got to do to get you to do what I want you to do? And it's not from that place. It's oh, I know what's going on here. And boom, and you respond to your child and you nail it and they respond back, and you've cemented this beautiful connection. You've created safety for that child, and then they grow and you grow. And that's by uncovering that deeper work, you're more able then to access the higher level of responsiveness and creativity towards your child that really sees them, hears them, feels them, knows them, and can play that role of parenting in its highest form. That's the goal you want to go for.
Yeah, I love
But you
that.
can't do that when you've got this other shit, these triggering, behaviors that come out, and you say to yourself, oh, my mother did that to me and I'm never going to do it as a parent. And then next minute your mother comes out of your mouth.
Yeah, that's right.
It's
And it's so
doing that
interesting.
work.
It's so interesting, isn't it? I remember one time I was driving the car and I did my dad. I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I just did my dad. You
Yeah.
don't do this, bloody blah. And I was
Yes.
like, oh my God, that was this big vomit. And I was just like, oh, and when you're
Yeah.
self-aware and that comes out, you go, oh,
Yeah.
that was dad, that was this, that was that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You tend to be quite aware of your vomits when
Yeah.
they do come out.
Yeah.
And then it's a matter of understanding, sometimes that you just can't help it, as the subconscious is,
Yeah.
95% of how we run our life.
Yeah.
When we
Yeah.
become cognitive, we can create amazing things through our
Mm.
subconscious and make ourselves subconsciously brilliant. Like, I know my gift, I'm so subconsciously aware of what people do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just chatting to someone today and I told them everything about themselves and how they ran, how they tick. I've only met him for like an hour and a half and he's like, you know me more than anybody that I know,
Yeah.
and that's a
That's that
program.
higher self
Yeah, it is. It's that
stuff.
higher self
Yeah.
that's what runs my life
Yeah.
in the way that I approach helping people.
So
And
can I ask you another question?
yeah, yeah, go for it.
How often do you pull that into your parenting, Jace? Like how does that show up for you in your parenting?
Yeah, so look, when I'll look at the pictures, right? So my youngest daughter, she sees me, she says, Dad, you're my safety.
Mm,
Right. So what I would do
exactly what she needs.
with both my daughters, especially, I'd say, you're always safe with dad. You're
Yeah.
always safe with dad. And so that both of them say, I'm always safe with your dad. So they've created this, and then I
Beautiful.
create a, a railroad to make sure that they see my actions that are safe.
Mm,
And then I see the picture and I go, okay, I have to be really mindful to make sure that I'm not her full rock because then she won't have a rock of her own.
mm,
So I'm using that higher self to make sure that she's not dependent on me because that
mm.
could be a problem if it's overcooked. So
Yeah,
I'm
right.
very, very mindful of making sure I'm not her full safety. I am one of her safety.
Mm,
So that higher self is calling on me at the moment to go make sure she's got that big rock and she learns how to build that rock to herself.
yeah, yeah.
So I know that that could be a displacement if I overdo that.
Mm,
And so sometimes when you think you're doing it right, and I'm this amazing safety as a man, as a dad for my daughter, while I'm also seeing the deficits that that could create if it's
mm.
too much involvement. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So then I'm quantumly looking and going, okay, I need to get that independence. I've got to say
Mm,
no here. I've got to
mm.
then the yes, and make sure that I'm really quantumly
Yeah,
understanding
yeah.
that moment and letting my higher self know when is the right time to be the support and when to alleviate the support so she starts building her rock,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because I could diminish her rock by being the safety all the time. So
Exactly.
that's where I
And
do that.
can
Yeah.
and
Go.
can I add to that now? The the alternative for that is dad wanting to be the rock for the daughter, and it's all about dad.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And when it's all about dad, that's the unconscious program. That's the
Yeah.
program of you're not enough. You're trying to prove that you're enough. You're trying to be the rock for the daughter. So that's the difference between when Jason was describing that, that higher self sort of, okay, I want to be her rock because that's beautiful what that male archetype is all about. It's that safety, it's that protection. I'm the rock, but at the same time, I've got to empower her. That is a statement where it's not about you. It's
Yeah.
all about her because
Yeah.
your own patterns, you're not having any needs in that situation.
No.
Whereas the alternative to that behavior could be, oh, my little girl, I want her to stay my little girl forever and I don't want her to grow up and I want her to rely on me and I want her to go to daddy for all of her problems. That would be a dysfunctional version of just what you've talked about.
100%. And that's what the higher self does.
Mm,
Because I
that's right.
know sometimes when someone says something to me, oh, you're my everything, and my whole body drops. I'm like, I'm doing
Yeah,
something wrong because
yeah,
that
yeah,
means they're not their everything for themselves and I'm a part of their everything.
yeah.
Right. And so usually people will go, oh my God, I'm their everything and get really chest pumped up and I'm
Mm,
doing the right thing. But the higher
yeah,
self
no,
knows balance.
that's
It
right.
knows better about that.
Yeah.
So it's always checking in. It
Mm,
always has to self-check to make
mm,
sure it's never, I do this and consistently do this. I need to check in to see if doing that is right today.
yeah.
And I think
That's
that's where
that
we miss
inner
it.
truth, that inner
Mm.
wisdom.
Yeah.
It's like a radar. And that's the place you want to start to cultivate as a parent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of parents make the stuff about themselves without realizing,
No, that's right.
especially if they
Mm.
missed out on stuff. I
Yep.
want my kid to have the best life because I didn't get it. So
Mm.
their kid's best life is related to them getting a better life because they feel better that their kid's life is better. And that can create a narcissistic kid sometimes. You're
Mm.
oversupplying, the kid becomes an arsehole,
Yeah.
right?
You're
And
creating
I've
a
seen that so
beast.
many times. You're creating a
Yeah.
beast by oversupply. Then the
Yeah.
kid just becomes, I could just want to take my cakes, thanks. And then they just go,
Mm.
one finger salute to the parents, fuck you. And we've created a monster out of oversupply from not getting what we got in childhood. And we create the opposite to what we wanted. And I've seen that so many times.
Yeah.
So what we thought was good was not good.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it is a challenge to get that right, isn't it?
It is. It's a continual spiritual practice. I call children are your best spiritual teachers.
They are.
And I don't think there's any too many things in life that grow you up like having children,
Well, hopefully. Right?
hopefully.
Yeah, because I think a lot of
Mm,
adults can stay children, and I've seen a lot of children have to be the adult,
mm, mm,
and they've had to grow up their parents because they've just
yeah.
their parents are children, and it can be really challenging.
Mm,
You know, Tracy, this conversation we could go forever. And I'm gonna hang up from this and also I want the listeners, I want you to really
mm,
understand like Stacey has so much to offer here. We're going to get all her details to get you guys to understand. So if this has really gotten you to have a bit of a think about, where you're parenting and what you're doing, and you've got someone who's, maybe two or three, she can help you, on that journey to figure out what's happening and what's going on. You're about to have a baby. This woman, oh my God, she is the resident angel on your shoulder to help you. Take it
thank you,
in,
Jace.
take it in.
Mm,
She is the angel. She was the angel on our shoulder. So I know from personal experience how phenomenal this woman is. So make sure you get in touch. Make sure you find out what she's doing and make sure you not take on the knowledge that she gives because she's not just knowledge, she's wisdom. She actually lives the journey of being the best mum she can be by admitting she doesn't do it all right all the time. She's really working on herself all the time.
yeah.
So thank you, Tracy, for giving us your wisdom today and giving the listeners a really great opportunity to experience what it is to be an aware person bringing life into this world.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jason. It's been a pleasure.
All right.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to our podcast. We'd love it if you could like and share it with your friends. Our website address is www.wellnessbreakthroughacademy.com. We also have all of the videos on YouTube under Wellness Breakthrough Academy as well. We also do small courses, live events. I have an amazing book called From Broken to Breakthrough. We'd love the opportunity to give you a hand to help you live your purpose, to find out what you're here for, to give you the direction. Our courses are amazing and we do everything really, really differently for what's happening in the world at the moment. So come and find out how we can help you break your limitations so you can live the life of your dreams. We'll chat soon.